Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the Weekly Travel Roundup, covering the headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. Please welcome our hosts, Mike McCormick and Ed Silver. Hey, Mike, nice to be back with you again.
Good to see you, Ed, as always.
As always. So, Mike, we were in DC last week attending the Elevate Plus Travel Connect conference. That's ARC and IATA have come together to put on a conference on airfare distribution, fare filing, and all kinds of NDC topics. A great conference last week. It was nice to be together in DC.
That certainly was. And really interesting. I mean, my perspective, having gone to this event before, years ago, and kind of watching the progression, it's really interesting. Like 3-4 years ago, being in that room, you had, 500 people, all these pricing experts, people focused on NDC, but seemingly the only people paying attention to any of it were the people in the room. And then fast forward to today, and this is at the epicenter of a whole bunch of, dramatic changes to our industry. And it was just really a moment of reflection for me. I looked at it and was like, wow, we know this is front and center now, but boy, has this all arrived. And the things that are coming, I know you have your thoughts about it too, that really interesting time for the industry and great time to be there at that event.
We have a couple articles that we'll cover today, some of which are topics that we talked about last week. And we have an interview coming up with someone who was on stage at the conference. So I'm excited about that. You ready for the podcast, Mike?
Let's get rolling.
All right, we're going to start today with our news stories. Mike, first news story of the day is an investor group led by Steve Singh acquires Direct Travel. I'll pull up the BTN article, but this was covered in news all around. And so why don't you tell us your perspective and bring our audience up to date on what's going on here?
Well, I would say fortune favors the bold, as the expression goes. But Steve is a big thinker, plays a serious game. I loved his kind of manifesto, and I mean that in a respectful way, good way. The perfect trip, but he actually published and talked about the mission that he's on, and why he is putting all these elements together. And I think it's great. I mean, it shows leadership, of course, right? But it's more than just, he's more than just investing. He's really has a vision of what he was aiming for. And it's really interesting to see that come to play. The obvious part about the direct travel thing to me is that, where before he had solutions in Spotnana, Troop Center that were, attempting to kind of bring new technology, new approaches to existing industries, right? Or segments of the industry, meaning payment, meetings, travel tech, et cetera. He went and bought a big sandbox for them to play in, basically, and I think it's interesting and it presents, another level of competition in the marketplace. But tied back to a game plan and a vision, which is more than just, hey, I want to be a travel agent or I want to be a travel tech provider. It's like it shows, he's showing and very, very open about why he's tying this all together. So be very interesting one to watch. It does go back to the same thing we were saying last week or last podcast about the fact that it's a big money, big player game. That this is not, the amount of investment that's required is not insignificant, right? To be a leader in the space. And, again, can't wait to talk to Jeff in our interview part 2, because, they have a lot of innovation going on at AmTrav. That's part of what they've, really anchored themselves around. So I'll be curious to get his thoughts about, some of that as well.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Along with the news of the acquisition of CWT, more action in this TMC space. I'm a big fan of Spotnana, Troop, and Center. So I think what Steve is doing here is very interesting, and will continue to shake up the market. And we'll see where corporate travel buyers start to trend as they think through all these moves.
Right.
All right, Mike, thank you for that. Our next article is Delta posts record revenue as corporate travel bounces back. So Delta, back back in the news with their quarterly earnings. Mike, let's give some context for everybody.
Well, Delta is certainly the bellwether for the industry, and interesting to watch, where they're, obviously where their results are coming in. I think give you a pretty good sense of both, with their whole footprint, route structure, et cetera, their presence, certainly is one of the, largest airlines in the world. They give us a really good indicator of what's happening in the industry overall. So clearly, they had a record quarter for a first quarter, which is particularly, from a profitability perspective, is usually the down quarter. Airlines tend to make all their money, during certainly second and third quarter. First quarter is usually the laggard. But even with that, they had a big swing from a loss last year to a small profit this year, which is considered really healthy given the market. Like I said, 37 million in the first quarter versus a $363 million loss same quarter last year. That's a huge upswing.
Yeah.
One of the big drivers, though, they said, was corporate account travel was up 14%, versus, some of the other areas which were traditionally, kind of soft, and it gave them a nice lift. The question becomes, and we'll find out when, Southwest and American and United all have earnings. I mean, United's on the 16th, Southwest and American on the 25th of the month. So after we see the full picture, we'll understand how much of that is just rising tide of the entire industry, or are we seeing some share shift here because of Americans' aggressive moves? What's really happening? But we won't know the answer to that until we get all the answers in. The other couple just interesting things that we talked about and have kind of pulled out a little bit. One was, that about the Olympics, that as much as, that leisure travel, event travel is huge and booming, they're really not seeing that as a boom for them necessarily. I mean, they'll certainly, as one of the, with them and their partner carriers, they'll certainly see, a big chunk of that travel, but it tends to be lower yield, displaces potentially some business travel, because business travelers tend to stay away then because it's like, there's just too much going on. It's kind of a unique kind of situation that, it's not bad for business, but it's not great for business either, just in terms of pure economics. The other part was that they made a note that they have like 50 to 100 parked and unused kind of regional jets. So interesting to see whether they will, really get more aggressive about putting more of those into service in some of the markets, and or potentially markets where American serves, because I know that's a core part of American strategy. So, the gamesmanship continues. We will see, but we'll know more by the end of the month.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for that context. Our last article is ATPCO unveils product catalog for a dynamic air offer filing. And this was big news at the conference we were at last week. Yep. A little insider baseball, I believe, but see if you can give a little context to our viewers, and I'll help you out where we need it, Mike.
Well, actually, I'm going to throw this one back to you because, I'd said at the beginning, like, that I thought it was really interesting, the conference itself, like the kind of before and after picture of, 3 or 4 years ago versus today, and where we sit with NDC in general and a lot of the activity in the industry. But I know from a product perspective, you were pretty jazzed about what you were hearing at the conference.
Yeah, look, I think if I go back to the origins of why NDC was invented as a standard, and some of the promises that were made of, why it was exciting to move all of connectivity to NDC, I think about just modern retailing in general, which includes personalization. I think about dynamic offers as a part of that promise. Continuous pricing is in there. And I'd say, at this conference, this was the first time I had seen all three of those legs really starting to come to life, in a real way, in a way in which people could take advantage of it. I saw a great presentation on personalization, and how you can tie personalization using NDC, as your schema. And then dynamic offers, this product catalog functionality is required to bring dynamic offers to life. And so announcing it and kind of showing how it functions behind the scenes for airlines to be able to take advantage of, that was huge. We also saw continuous pricing in expansion of the way in which fares are filed. And I know it's a little technical, but it allows for a pretty dramatic increase in fare filing functionality. So you're bringing all of this functionality together. You tie it into NDC, and as our next guest will, start to explain, now agencies can start to take advantage of functionality that really was only available through, the .coms, the airline .coms. And so good on ATPCO to bring this to life, and interesting to see, how agencies and other OTAs start to bring this, into the future. And so, I think it's great news and look forward to seeing it out in the marketplace.
Yep. That's great.
Okay, with that, let's close this one out and I will introduce our guest, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, Mike, it's time for a quick commercial break. Would you tell us a little bit about BLS, one of our great sponsors?
Well, yeah, we talk about them all the time. Great family company, ground transportation. They handle the most demanding, entertainment customers, music industry, entertainment industry, but also do a great job for corporate, and which hopefully is a lot less a lot less challenging to manage than the entertainment and music crowd. But they are really terrific, like you said, great partner to the industry, great service. The question we'll ask Jeff eventually is, things about what won't change. And I think they're a great example of a company that, works hard at, staying on top of, everything from their offering, the way they present it, the way they work with their customers. But the key is service, right? Reliable, great drivers, most, updated fleet, and being able to continuously reinvest, which they do. And that's no small task in that industry. Ground transportation is a tough industry to be, to deliver on every single day. And they do. So, we're proud to have them as a sponsor, but also, they're just great folks to work with in general. So always worth calling them out and thanking them for their support of the both the roadshow and the podcast. So,
all right. Thank you to BLS for your sponsorship. Next up is our interview. I want to bring to the stage Jeff Klee, CEO and co-founder of AmTrav. Jeff is a self-described computer geek who developed and sold his first video game at the age of 13. In college, he and a buddy got a crash course in the intricacies of the airline business while planning their own backpacking trip, and later decided to use that know-how to help others save money on air travel. What was first known as 1-800-CHEAP-AIR was founded out of a University of Michigan dorm room in 1989. When the company took off, Jeff ditched his law school plans for a far more exciting journey, combining two passions, travel and software development. CheapAir.com was born, and soon after, AmTrav for Business, which together serve almost 400,000 travelers annually. Jeff grew up in LA. He still lives there with his wife, 2 young kids, a golden retriever, none of whom wants to be anywhere near him when the Dodgers are losing. Please welcome to the stage, Jeff Klee. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you guys.
I see you wearing your Dodgers sweatshirt. It's oh no, I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, I'm a disgruntled Dodger fan. We spend all this money, we get all these great players, and I mean we never put it all together. I never see that promise. And we walked 14 batters yesterday. I coached my son's 9-year-old team. If that team walks 14 batters, it's a catastrophe. I got $200 million payroll. We can't get the ball over the plate. So it's frustrating, but I could go on and on. I won't ruin the podcast.
No, it's great. We all love our teams. I said to you before that, like, with the Phillies, what we love about them is that they make the Braves' life miserable, every year, right? It's like and the Dodgers are on the other end of that in the West, right? They just, like you said, man, it's like they get there and they have all the promise, but just can't, like, yeah, they should, they should be winning, like they should be repeating every year between them and, probably the Yankees and the Braves. You'd be like, well, how is anyone else competing? But yet somehow, right? It's
I mean, baseball's a mess. It's not fair that a team should be able to spend that much money, but if they're going to, they should do something.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. So I don't know.
There's always hope.
Money matters, but it's not everything, right?
Yeah,
still got to play the games.
That's what the Dodgers have proven.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I mean, I really appreciate it. I mean, other than the fact that you're a Dodgers fan and you went to Michigan, so as a Notre Dame grad, I'm like not loving that either. But we'll let that one go. I mean, what always impressed me, really impressed me about you and you and Craig is that, you guys have like always kind of seen what's coming and tried to position a business or an opportunity against that. I mean, a little shout out for Ed, who also did that with like lodging.com. And it's like the early days, especially early days of the web where, everyone was still trying to figure out like where it all fit together, how it was, travel was there was really dramatic changes. I look back at those times and say there are these kind of moments in the certainly the modern era of our industry where there have been these big kind of dramatic kind of inflection points where like there's a lot going on, a lot of chaos and kind of resetting the industry. And I think we're in the middle of another one. And I think what you're doing, and certainly you're out there being an advocate of, it's really, it's compelling. Like you are certainly a voice for this new environment and change. Like a little bit like, what drives you guys to do that? Like, what's the motive? I always wonder what drives you.
I think the motive is that, this industry is so complicated and doing anything of significance in it, it's hard. It's not easy. And when I first got into the travel business and I started learning how fares worked and, learning GDS cryptic commands and being able to like combine fare-based codes to come up with a lower fare. And, any other industry, the price is the price. But when you're buying an airline ticket, there's like, 8,000 possible ways to construct a fare. And that was always really intriguing to me. And it's what made travel exciting. In the early days, we started as a consumer business and it was all about trying to save people money on airfare. And then when, shortly thereafter, the internet became a thing and it became obvious that, because for a while, this was kind of something I did while I figured out what I really want to do with my life. Then the internet came and like, hey, this is really cool. And suddenly there's an opportunity to combine two things that I really love, which is travel and technology. And if you can do that right, then you're really going to have something. And we're still trying, and it's still complicated, and we're still trying to make it simpler. But I think that's where my passion is in doing things that are it's really hard to ingest all this content from all these suppliers and the formats that it comes in and present it to the traveler or the company in a way that's going to create a good experience.
So along those lines, like we talk about this, with the current state of affairs, part of what's driving the chaos seemingly is that the industry certainly seemed like it was largely just really unprepared and caught off guard by a lot of Americans' actions and kind of that was coming. Like I said at the beginning, like even to go to the event last week and see the difference, like where it was kind of like a best kept secret, 4 or 5 years ago. And now it's like front and center. And this is the epicenter of a lot of activity. It's like, what is it about our industry? Why did we struggle to adapt? And why did it take like almost like a gun to the head for the industry to get, finally get us moving to where we need to go?
Frankly, I think there's a major sense of entitlement among TMCs. And I think we learned the hard way. We started in the consumer business, and I mean the most significant event that happened in the history of our company was when sheepair.com was the lion's share of our business, and Delta pulled their content from SheepAir. They said, we're not adding any value. We're just selling tickets. We're not upselling ancillaries. And I credit that with, even though it was devastating at the time, that changed my whole outlook about the lengths we need to go to create value to both sides of the equation. And I think that there is a sense among TMCs that, because we've done it this way, and because this way has been good enough for us, it always will be good enough. And it's blown my mind as we've seen things like, paid seats come out, which is, now we're talking like a decade old, but no sense of urgency to get those into their booking tools or their platforms. I mean, there's still booking tools that don't let you buy an extra legroom seat. And I think, as fare brands, airlines start to sell more and more fare brands. Again, no urgency. Like to me, when Pick Your Airline, when they started listing 4 fares instead of 1, it was, oh my God, the airline sites have something we don't have. How can we get this, on our platform so we've got parity tomorrow? And everybody, corporate travelers, they're fine. They don't need it. They're used to it. There's just this general level of acceptance that, I think has been really damaging. And then more recently, as the airlines started getting really good at letting you change a ticket online and on their app, and the airline apps became great, same thing. Like, a lot of players out there are really content to just continue to make people call in to change a booking. And I think it's the, and I've been, I'm usually wrong in my predictions. I've been saying since the beginning of time, we're not going to get away with this for much longer. And yet we as an industry, we keep getting away with this. But I'm going to continue to double down and say, the day of reckoning will come when if you can't give your travelers an experience that's at least as good, but it should be better than what they get by going supplier direct, then you're just not going to stay relevant. So, I think it took a gun to the head to get people to move on NDC. Now, I will say the airlines didn't help the fact that there were a lot of kind of conflation going. There was conflation of what was the purpose of NDC. I was 1,000% bought in about NDC as a better technology to deliver richer offers. But a lot of airlines just saw it as a way to change the economic model. And commercial models need changing. I'm the first one to say that. But let's have separate conversations about those things. By conflating them, I think you got a lot of resistance to NDC early on that was unhelpful.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that's good. Yeah. Interesting, because, and I think you just kind of summed it up, like in a way, like on one hand, I hear you, very much, an advocate of change and a better experience and in the technology and what the new standards bring and all that. On the other hand, to your point, like, particularly America, look, Americans, it has been and continues to be ultra aggressive about, the tactics they're using to effectively drive change. You see the spectrum of them on one, maybe of the majors, like there, Delta which is a much more, kind of, let's say, thoughtful, but certainly very paced approach to what they want to do and when they want to do it and how they want to do it. And then everyone else is somewhat in between. Right. And at the event last week, Delta came out first time publicly and kind of talked about the fact that they are, on their own NDC journey and where that is. And, we kind of all knew that, but I think the fact that they're out there publicly now stating it is another kind of like milestone, right? What do you think? Do you agree with the tactics that the Americans using? The mileage one in particular is really going to cause a lot of angst, in these coming months. But thoughts on that?
I think generally speaking, like you mentioned, the Delta announcement. I think it's great what Delta's doing. It's great their approach. But if it weren't for American, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I mean, so I give American a ton of credit for forcing an issue that I think need to be forced, and it took this kind of the stick approach, or it wouldn't have happened. Like no one would move, and look at how quickly suddenly the GDSs were able to get their acting gear. And now, I mean, one thing I'm on certain like advisory boards and working groups for NDC, and in the last year, the tone has changed so dramatically from a year ago, we would be arguing, is NDC even a good thing? Do we even want it? Do we need it? And then I was kind of like, one of a few in the room arguing for it. Now, no matter where, you have TMCs and OTAs, and everyone's in a different spot on their journey, but I think everybody has accepted and in fact embraced the idea that this is coming, this is good. So, and I give American credit for that. It wouldn't have happened without them. Now, do I agree with everything American has done? No. And I think they also, they've also made the decision at the same time to just de-emphasize managed travel. And I think it's not as important for them. So some of their decisions are not really about NDC. They're about just philosophy on how they want to run their business, which is fair. I think what disappoints me most about American is things where I understand the push to get people to NDC, but when they start differentiating content on their .com site, that concerns me. Like the American for Business program, where you have to be on AA.com. I mean, what I would like to say, I think it's perfectly fair and good that they're now offering the ability to get corporate rates through their .com site. That used to be only in the managed travel. So I want parity. Like I'm not saying we should have all these advantages that direct customers don't get, but I honestly believe the healthiest environment is if there is parity and you truly give your customers choice. I mean, American keeps talking about loyalty, and wanting to reward that loyalty. And I think part of rewarding loyalty is giving your best customers the option to book where they want to book. Now, that being said, if an intermediary is not willing to, American has every right, and I think it makes good reason to say, hey, if you're going to sell our product, you need to be consuming it through a modern interface where we can deliver everything we want to deliver. Otherwise, we don't want to work with you, which is essentially what they're doing. And I think that's fair game. But for those who do support those efforts, who do connect the way they want to connect, display their inventory the way they want it to be displayed, I think all in all, everyone would be better off if there was kind of some sort of content parity. And I do think yes, there might be some channel shift that benefits American where they get some people to come direct, but I can't imagine that is positively offsetting the loss, the erosion of business where people, because of some of the channel games, are leaving American. So if I were American, I think keep doing what you're doing. You're blazing a trail, and it's great, but get people on board to modernize, get them on the latest technology. But if they do, reward those intermediaries, and more importantly, the customers of those intermediaries.
There you go.
The breadth of what American offers.
There you go. I mean, that was always to me like what you kind of comes back to. It's like how is this like fragmented, experience, withholding miles, doing it. It's a horrible customer experience. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think for them, my premise is still that it not only it ultimately makes their brand look bad. Like I think there's some consequences there that they're not really like thinking through, because when you start going to sites that you're booking and you start seeing messaging that you're not going to get your miles here, and you're not, it's like,
it's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's bad for the industry. It's bad for American. I mean, I don't see that as being a positive outcome. Now, but I agree with your point about the fact that clearly the industry needed a push, right, to get beyond, to get over the hump to where kind of even where we are now, where at least it's pushing that, adoption. But leads into the next part of the discussion, which is, okay, Amex CWT, assuming they get approval, Steve Singh steps up and buys direct. This is not, it's not a for your average agency out there, it's a tough road. I mean, in terms of keeping up with the amount of investment.
It requires a lot of investment. We were talking about that, at the event, Jeff, in terms of the amount of development time you're putting, against these efforts. It's not easy and won't be easy to maintain. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've been saying this for a while. I think obviously there's going to be a ton of consolidation. I mean, we're already seeing that. And I think the number of players who survive and win will be small, and you're going to have the wherewithal to be able to build a lot of technology yourself. I think TMCs have been really great at cobbling together technology pieces. And I give them a lot of credit. Like, they've done it in some pretty creative ways, but I just don't think that's going to work going forward. I think having a corporate booking tool that's very disconnected from the servicing end of the business, where your advisors are using one tool, your customers are using another. There's too much friction there, and the industry got away with it as corporate booking tools were evolving, and when they started out new, it was like anything was better than nothing. But now, again, I bring it back to the fact that the supplier sites have gotten so good that anyone who's building a business travel platform has to compete with that with a great integrated experience. So I think I don't know what the future of the GDSs is. I root for the GDSs. I think our industry is way better if GDSs remain strong. I think the GDSs are completely off track right now. I'm not at all happy with how they've, and yes, they're getting NDC implementations pretty quickly, but they're shoehorning NDC into old stuff instead of really starting with the blank slate that I think they need to. So I think, we direct connect. Every NDC connection we have is direct. It's not through a GDS, and we're continuing that strategy. I would love to not need to do that, but I think right now we do. And therefore, if you don't do all that, it's going to be really tough to compete.
Yeah.
This is really a moment. Sorry, Mike. This is a moment where you would argue innovation should start to shine when everybody's got access to the same level of complexity as the direct.com does. Then you really can do some unique things in corporate travel and even in online travel that modern retailing and travel you haven't been able to do. So I'm excited to see, where you take it from an innovation perspective and with those investments in direct connects.
Yeah, it's certainly a much different competitive game than it was, even a few years ago. Right. And I think changing even more, and you see it in the, I feel for like the ASTA, approach, right. And they're going at it from a, unfair competitive, because you look at the core of like the ASTA profile of agencies, and I know it's tough, right? Because you have a lot of agencies that don't have the wherewithal. They don't have they don't have a team of developers. They don't, and they're trying to hang on to their business, and, it's tough, right? It's a very chaotic. Now, the ASTA is doing what they need to do to represent their constituency and to at least try to draw attention to the fact that some of the the tactics are. It's not resistance to change or innovation, but it's that we talked about the tactics being used are unfair. It's a tough battle, but yeah.
I mean, ASTA would serve its members much better if it was trying to be a constructive force to making NDC work, making NDC more adoptable, more consumable, driving GDSs or aggregators to evolve in the way they need to evolve to support smaller TMCs or less tech savvy TMCs who maybe don't have the development teams to do things themselves. I mean, by trying to fight, I mean, American Airlines, it's their plane. They're flying the planes. It's their business. They can do whatever they want. They can choose who they want to partner with, sell to, under what terms. So, I mean, the notion that the government should get involved to control how American wants to distribute its product, I mean, it's ludicrous to me, and it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy when there's actually a lot that ASTA could do to probably help move things along if they took a very different path. But
Mike, we have time for one more question.
Yeah. So this is just a thought. Like, we talk all about what's changing and all this chaos and disruption and what's happening and the opportunities too. But what's not going to change about business travel? Like, is there any element of this that will still be the same 10 years from now?
I mean, if I could narrow that question a little bit to be about like the way business travel is managed, I think that
fair.
I mean, the one truth that will always remain is that we who are in this space, we're serving two masters, and they're both important. It's the company who we provide value to in the form of providing visibility and savings and control, but also the traveler. And the traveler needs a great experience, and if you have friction between the two, the solution probably isn't going to go very far. So I think we all still need to find ways to make both of those happy, even if it looks very different than how things look now. And you touched upon it in your intro, Mike. I mean, I think the one common thread is still and will always be the service, because you could provide. We always talk about technology, and technology is much sexier, much more exciting. But there's nothing that will endear a customer to us like service, whether it's at the company level or the traveler level. And I always I read through every customer satisfaction survey that with the response that we get, and I'm always, because I'm very technology focused and product focused, I always want people to say, "Oh my God, your user interface is so great! Like, this is so great." No one says
that's you and Ed.
Yeah. This, I spoke to this advisor. I chatted and got I was in this huge bind, and so helped me out. And we get these glowing comments are always about a person.
The personal touch. Yeah.
And I know, we don't have time to get into the whole AI thing, but I mean, for the time being, I think it's clear that people want that personal service. Doesn't mean they want it every time they book a trip. That they only want it when they want to do as much as they can by themselves. But when the shit hits the fan, they want to know that they've got someone they could reach really quickly and who's going to be awesome and fast and competent and help them. And I don't see a time when that stops being important.
That's great. Well, Jeff, man, appreciate all your passion and certainly expertise, and I love to see you guys compete and give your other TMC competitors a good run for the money. So but of course, excluding the Dodgers, we never want them to give us a run for the money. So but thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Jeff Klee is CEO and co-founder of AmTrav. Jeff, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Time for a commercial break real quick. So Mike, you and I are planning our next trip already to New York City, and we are sure to stay again at the Omni Berkshire Place. It's our favorite location in the city, easy for us to get to see our clients, and the staff there are just fantastic. It's a historic hotel, and we've had several meetings there in terms of great meeting space. And so it's just a fantastic place to host events, and the staff takes great care of you. And so a shout out to our sponsor, the Omni Berkshire Place. Thanks again for your sponsorship.
Yep, that's great.
All right, Mike, the last segment of our show, we wrap up with headwinds and tailwinds, where we identify what we think is adding value to travel or taking it away. Mike, today you're in charge of headwinds. What's slowing us down?
Well, I'm trying to spend some time investing some time on this issue, which this is a little different twist. It's about, we've talked about it before, but it's the whole idea of reform and legislation passed to basically put limits on what credit card companies can charge merchants.
Yep.
And put restrictions around it. But then in turn, the unintended consequence could be, shrinking of all of the points and earning potential for the customer, because part of what that merchant fee pays for is what all these amazing programs that we all participate in personally. And it's not even all that, it's what happens if that pool dries up. You've got like literally, I forget the number, it's over 100 million like trips planned using those same points and miles. Right. And then all the negative economic impact if that goes away. And so I'm trying to dig into it a bit. I'm based here in DC. There's an event, U.S. Tourism Economy Alliance is having an event tomorrow night. I'm going to go sit in on that, kind of hear the story a bit. But I mean, it's one of those, we've talked about it, keeping an eye on the issue, because again, I've done a lot of work on the Hill, a lot of work with Congress and with the executive branch over the years, helping shape legislation. But a lot of times you spend a lot of time trying to educate legislators, not on the issue that they're trying to tackle, because there's good intentions in a sense around that, consumer protection, different things, but it's always guarding against the unintended consequences of our industry. So let's spend a little time focused on it, but let's say it's a potential headwind we're trying to keep an eye on. So I'll throw it back to you for a tailwind. What you got? Give me some good news.
Yeah. So look, I'm going to circle back to the discussion we had earlier about innovation in modern travel retailing. Last week, there was a fantastic presentation on personalization in travel. And, as far as we are in terms of these interfaces and our abilities, we really haven't seen great modern retailing from a personalization perspective in travel, not yet. Everyone always talks about, who's the Amazon of travel and who can personalize your experience the way Amazon does. You see very different things than I do, Mike. And in travel, that's not really the case. And last week, in terms of really putting together how NDC can drive personalization, and you can use that technology to, take it the next step in terms of, air in particular, I really think that the next wave of innovation around personalization is here. I think it will help, speed up and really be a great, feature that consumers and corporate travelers have been looking for a long time in terms of how they book travel. So my headwind is really seeing personalization come to life in travel.
No, you mean tailwind.
Tailwind, sorry. I always get them mixed up. One's speeding us up and the other one's slowing us down.
Well, you're speeding us up. That's good news.
All right, Mike. Well, Mike, that is our show for today. Thanks again to our sponsors, BLS and Omni, and we will see you back again in a couple weeks. Thanks, Mike.
Talk to you soon. See you, Ed.